alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is a fellow podcaster and a former guest of this, previous guest from this show, I should say. He's now the current guest, so saying former guest is kind of weird. Nick Kim, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up? So it is Nicko Kim.
Nicko,
I know,
sorry.
But no, at the time, because if you did listen to our the last time we sat down together, we informed you guys that we go way back. So at the time when we did hang out, I was going by Nick. So for him to call me by Nick is not unfamiliar for me. But it's so it's cool, right? Like names. People can have different names. Like I have a friend. God, did we just go into it?
Yeah, dude, go for it.
That's so dumb. I'm so sorry. But like, so I have a friend, his name, I call him Lee, and that's how he introduced me. That's how he introduced himself to me. And he's one of my golf partners out in El Paso. But whenever we hang out with some of his old friends, they all call him Greg, which is his name. And it's like, it's interesting that people have, it's not even a different persona, but it's still a different name.
Yeah.
And it's just a different way to portray oneself. But anyway, yeah, what's up, guys? My name is Nicko Kim. I'm a podcaster for the Psyche-Delic podcast. That's the Psyche, like the mind hyphen Delic podcast, because we are very much we are fanatics about the psyche. We're awesome, man. We check us out. We're on Apple, Spotify. We just started a YouTube. So yeah.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, man. Like we're getting big. So I actually just hit up. I emailed Jordan Peterson, and I'm hoping that something comes out of that.
Well, fingers
crossed. Are you
crossed
familiar
for
with Jordan Peterson?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of him, but I am familiar. Yeah.
Oh, you're not a fan. What makes you not a fan of him?
Oh, it's just a variety of things. It's just we don't have to go into it. I don't want to make a conflict here.
That you know what? That's fair.
I just have to be honest about my opinion. I mean, it's not, by which I mean, I actually the first time I heard him talk, it was on the Joe Rogan Experience, and that was pretty okay for a while there.
Yeah,
some of that stuff though is some of the stuff I just differ with him on a lot of points. I do like some of his stuff, but mostly I think what he's talking about is storytelling. And his life advice is stuff I don't necessarily always agree with because I see it more of as a storytelling thing.
But I mean, there's a lot of detail. Pardon. There's a lot of detail in the story.
No, there is. And I mean, and he is a psychologist, so it makes sense that he's going to approach it as if the story is real things, basically. And vice versa, really. It was, but there are differences between a crafted story and the real world. And that's and I don't know. Again, we don't have to go into it too far. I just wanted to explain my position a little bit. I feel like it's unfair.
We can still talk about the idea.
Sure.
That's fair. But I mean, the idea, I wish I could find that poem, but we were talking about how I don't like small talk.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll talk about that later. Anyway, so yeah, the concept of, sorry, I'm putting myself back on track. Not that I wasn't paying attention. It was just more so I was trying to look at two places at once. So, yeah, so the idea is that there's message in the story. There's still a meaning behind the story. Like I cannot wait till you're on our podcast. So I'm not going to ask this question. Moving that one to the side. I think there's always a message to the story. So we need to assess what that message is, and I think that's what he does at a psychological level. So I mean, I can understand that because
from that perspective, I'd agree with you. I think that's probably fair. Yeah.
But because there's some messages that aren't, I'll say, ethically something that one can agree with, that's understandable.
Yeah.
It's understandable that one would want to, or one could disagree in some points.
Well, thanks. I'm glad we can be adults about this. I was worried about that, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah, absolutely. No, see, and that's the thing, right? Like, I know I have the tendency to come off as somebody who's very disagreeable because I'm just very fucking blunt, like just straightforward. And getting to the poem that I was talking about. So I'll try and do it from memory, but so it goes. I don't like small talk. Like so, I come off as crash and brash. It's like I need a class or crash course in social etiquette, because delicate minds tend to fold once I start sharing mine. So I'm inclined to say, fuck the small talk. We can talk about my dick if I wanted to talk about it or something like that.
Oh, cool.
Oh man,
Yeah,
I forgot.
I like that though.
But
That's a good poem. I mean, good.
but yeah,
It's like slam poetry when you do it out loud too, which is I guess the
Yeah.
point of it, right? I mean, it's kind of
Right.
a lot of poetry is meant to be spoken, if not all of it. It definitely originally was.
True. I like how you said originally was, but there's because that I mean everything like it's it's more than fair to say that the spoken language was before the written language.
By far.
More than fair to say that, right? Like by far, right? So of course that's not fair to it's fair to say that poems were spoken first, but I think the rhetorical outlet of the written aspect, like one is able to read in their own, in their own tones, in their own ways, and all of that, and that's why some poems just screamed at them. Like, for example, I think of the poem "Chicago" by Carl Sandburg, and I think of the poem "Howl" by Allen Ginsberg.
I love
And
that.
God, I love you. Thank you for saying that. That's my favorite poem of all time.
It's so beautiful. It's amazing. It's stark
Right.
and it's bleak. I love it.
It's so freaking blunt. The father of hippies, and that's why when somebody says you're a hippie, I was like, yeah. You know what I'm saying?
I like that lineage. I'll take that.
Right. That's well put. I like that lineage. You're such a writer.
Oh well, you do something for 20 years, 17 years, 18 years, whatever. I've been doing this for. You develop some talk. You speak the language. You talk the talk as well as write the writing.
You find the way to say the right words. Yeah, man.
Yeah, sometimes.
I think that.
From time to time, I've been known to.
God, yeah. So right. So I was listening to Chicago and by Carl Sandburg, actually reading it. Such a fucking pleasure. You actually hear the originators. Of the originator of the poem read their own poem, their tone, and hearing his tone, and it was just dry and just monotone. Same with Howl by Allen Ginsberg. But there's like so much emotion in those poems.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't these poets expressing those emotions? And that always bugged me. So
Well,
like,
to be
if
fair
you ever
to Ginsberg,
oh, go
though, sorry, I want to split hairs a little bit with Ginsberg, because the recording I have of Howl that he read, it was much later. He'd written the poem years ago at that point, so he'd read it a ton of times, and he actually mentions at one point, like, this part is supposed to be read. I mean, at the end of the poem, you're supposed to get really excited. Basically, you're supposed to feel extremely excited by the end of the poem, or like excited in like the negative way usually. Like it should be, or ecstatic, I think is actually the word he picked. But he's like, but I've read this poem too many times. It's hard for me to feel that way. And that's basically, it's like he's not,
Okay,
he's not
that's
a
fair.
performer in the same way. That's all I'm saying. Like, he's not like a musician who's going to put all the emotion to the song the 300th time they perform, or the 3,000th time they perform it.
You know, that's fair. And of course, I can completely understand that, because as a performer, you tend to forget the reason why you wrote this poem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you've said it so many times, and then you've shared so many other poems, and it's like you're so disconnected to the reason that you wrote the poem. And I can understand that. So you know what, Tim? Touche. Well said.
We'll just give Ginsberg a pass on that. I don't know about Sandberg, but we'll give Ginsberg a pass for sure.
I'll go. And I guess the same could be said about Carl Sand. I mean, because that's pretty much all he's famous for. Okay, I'm being a little.
Well, I mean, like there's some people at their peak. There's the thing that they're most famous for at any rate. Yeah.
Right. So if that's what he's most famous for, he probably beat that dead horse. So he too probably by the time recording was a thing, he was like, yeah, I'm done having this emotion to say this poem.
Right. And that's one of the I find it so fascinating, the kids were like, yeah, I'm not really able to say this poem right anymore by the time he could perform it for audio recording. Like he couldn't do it the way he intended it to be read, which is interesting.
Right. And I think that's a fair thing to consider. Thank you for providing that perspective. Like that sounds so sarcastic and facetious, but it's not.
No, I agree. I don't think you sound sarcastic, honestly. It's all in your head, dude. It's all in your head. So,
that's fair.
Yeah, so, and I'm not just going to psychoanalyze the guy from the Psyche-Delic podcast. You know, why not?
Do it.
Yeah,
do it. That's why I'm here.
Well, because it seems to me, and granted, I have a little bit of unfair perspective here because we did encounter each other when we were both, young teenagers or preteens even. I forget exactly. Yeah, preteens. Right. I'm sorry. It's just been a while. In other words, but I remember some things, and I happen to have a pretty good memory. But we're not going to go into all that stuff, but because I think it's a little maybe too personal for a podcast like this, unless you're okay with it.
I don't care about being personal. I'm an open book, bro.
Okay, I should have asked you in advance, but there we go. We did it on the show. We did it live, man.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
So the podcast. So the thing is, because I remember, I forget. I mean, actually, it's hard for to remember if it was you or your brother who said that they thought they were like a bad person when they were a kid. I think it was you. I'm pretty sure it was you.
Yeah, no, that's me. Yeah. I still hold that.
You put it in other terms,
belief.
but it's interesting because I mean most people don't feel that way, right? I got to imagine, and that's kind of what we're told as writers. At least now, it's kind of the one of the things you learn in a more advanced level of writers is that no one really thinks they're a bad person. But and to share a little bit of personal stuff, so I'm not just exposing something about you. As I felt that way for a long time too. I don't feel that way now, but I did feel that way for a long time. I felt like I was a bad person. But it's that kind of feeling that is kind of like people deny that existing at some point when writing fiction, which is weird, right? What do you think about that, I guess?
So I'll actually tell you that I've actually thought about this recently and actually wrote a poem about it recently. And it's the concept is I am bad because I am defined as bad. I am evil because I am defined as evil. I am dysfunctional because I am defined as dysfunctional. I am troubled because I am defined as trouble. Right? I mean, true. Having troublesome nature, that's dysregular in the minimum. Right? To be not normal and just fall into line. That's a lot to deal with, and so. When you have something like ADHD, when you have something like autism, when you have something that I can't even say that's not normal because it's normal. You know what I'm saying?
But it's unusual, maybe.
That
maybe
gives you
fewer people have it than don't.
More so. Right? I mean, that's fair, but more so the something that gives somebody a leg down, so to speak, for social engagement. Like it's a tough thing to be in. So when you're in that kind of mindset, to be defined as evil because you are in that you are in this, you have this detachment from society. It's tough, man. Like it's tough. It's tough to define that as evil. It's more so just trying to find ways to attach themselves, and I think that's all it comes down to. Like that's what helped me come to attach myself to reality, because I was attached. I mean, I was so egocentric, all in my own world. That's pretty much why I hurt so many people, is because I was in my own world and I didn't care who was hurt.
Oh, so you kind of define yourself so as to put yourself in the world with everyone else. Is that it?
Well, of course.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just trying to make sure I understand.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I couldn't understand that as an id-centric child, right? Because especially as children, we're all about that instant gratification, that id, right? That scratching the id, so to speak, and that's like, do you one marshmallow now or two marshmallows later? It's like the heck you talking about? One marshmallow now, right?
Yeah.
that's what we are as kids. I mean, there are children who aren't like that. We'll take the two marshmallows later, which is, I'll say, evolutionary advances, but we'll, at the minimum, right?
Yeah, yeah, for
But the
sure.
we have the id, especially dudes. We are all about instant gratification. That's why we rape, right? That's why we're the number
More
one.
aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah, because we want it, we take it. Thus is the hubris of not humankind but man, right? But we want what we get, and so we scratch that id, and it breaks some social norms. So it's not that those people need to be punished; they need to learn how to not scratch that id and learn how to put themselves into society. And I didn't make that realization until after I was 25 because I wasn't thinking about my place in society. It was more so I was thinking about how society was impacting me. Does that make sense?
No, it does actually. It makes plenty of sense. I think it's interesting because I feel like I'm a low impact individual, and I don't. I feel like I'm a low impact individual. Obviously, this show has been growing a little bit lately, but I don't. That's one of the reasons I think I've actually been less successful in some ways. Is that I'm afraid of going out there and what?
No, that's yeah, self actual, not self fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It's like I don't want
if
to make
you
a splash because I don't want to bother people. But if you don't bother
if
people,
you
you don't attract people either.
if you feel like you're low impacting, then you will probably be low impacting.
Well, I mean, this is a conclusion I more or less came to recently. It wasn't something I decided that was going to be to begin with. But
That's fair.
but I
No,
feel
that's
like
fair.
I was always on that direction of like I want to be polite. I don't want to make a big scene. But on the other hand, I'm a media personality now. I mean, I'm a podcast. I'm an author, and if I'm not going to make a
Right.
scene, why would anyone pay attention to me? So I'm
What's the
working on making a bigger scene in some ways.
Absolutely. What's the intent is always who's your target audience,
Yes.
right? And if they're your target audience, what are they listening to? How can you get them to listen to you, right? Like advertise where you want to be, where you want to be heard, even if it's one or two people at a time. It
Absolutely.
takes
Absolutely.
it takes years to create a writing empire. How long did it take the Lord of the Rings to blow up?
Oh,
Like
it was a
50,
long
60
time.
years?
No, I mean it wasn't that long. It took. I mean, granted, Tolkien didn't start. He didn't write it till he was an adult. He was like an older man. I mean, honestly, he had children, right? He had an adult son at that point. Yeah, because he wrote it and sent it to his son who was at war. You know,
Right.
and so who was in World War II. So it obviously the Hobbit was earlier because that was I believe that was a children's story that he wrote for his son again. But it's interesting because the Lord of the Rings picked up in the wake of World War II. And obviously, it was like 1950s, 60s, stuff like that. So it did take a while to catch on. But now it's probably enjoying its highest popularity, or at least it was, 15 years ago when the movies were coming out.
That's fair.
And now it's a property. Now it's a franchise in the media world, which is interesting. And that's, 100 years almost since The Hobbit was released.
Right. So it takes years for an empire to be built off of words. You feel
Absolutely,
me?
especially with fewer
Like,
books. That's the other thing. I mean, my challenge has been creating enough books because in this day and age, we're in the age of neopulp, the new pulp, versus, and the old pulps were also the 1920s, and they're in around that time, when they started.
what do you mean by pulp?
Pulp novels, like pulp refers to the kind of paper they were printed on back then. Pulp fiction was the early. It was like Tarzan, Conan the Barbarian. Most of the stuff that we recognize as genre fiction now was created back then.
Okay.
John Carter Mars. There's a bunch. I mean, those are just the sci-fi ones, and the other ones, the ones I'm really familiar with. But there's tons of detective stories. Raymond Chandler, westerns, romances, basically popular fiction of all kinds created back in the 1920s. And now 100 years later, with the advent of the ebooks, we have this explosion of content. And so to be competitive in that field as an independent, you need to produce way more books than a traditional author does. Because
This is why you have
yeah.
20 books.
I only have 8, but yeah, that's why I'll have 20 hopefully soon. I produced more books than that, and I published more books than that, but I only have 8 right now, I think.
That's fair.
I sometimes forget. I've taken a few down, consolidated a few others into novel length works because they were shorter, and now that's about what I've got is 8. But there will be a 9th one soon, so whatever. And then hopefully a 10th, and so on until there's a shitload of them.
I'll definitely be asking you all about that on our interview panel. Like, I definitely want to get everybody to talk with you. We'll talk more about that after the show.
Of course.
Yeah, man. What's So I was thinking. So this is something that I was thinking just recently, and I think I've come to a conclusion. What do you call a one-line poem?
Oh boy, I don't know any names for that necessarily. What do you call it?
I think so. I think you would be like, yeah, I think that's fair. Let me remember. So William Blake wrote the Proverbs. Proverbs are one-line poems.
No, that's true. It's very very concise, actually. Yeah.
Right.
And there's a whole book in the Bible called Proverbs, right? Like then that's basically all those.
Right. And what were they all
They're
all
like
about?
One-line poems. Just a little bit of advice
one line.
Yeah.
Like William Blake definitely made it into poetry. The Bible was more, what's the term? Aesop.
Yeah,
what did he write?
Fables. Yeah.
Yeah, something with a lesson. Yeah. Right? Is that what fables were?
Yeah, exactly. They teach you something you should. Yeah, they teach you a lesson through story. Yeah, it's a fable.
Right. I guess those were more like one-line fables, but even then, that's pretty poetic. But whatever. Right. So what do you call a one-line poem? And I think Proverbs. I think that's very fair because especially the Proverbs of hell. Like, oh, goodness, man, that's so good. That's just some good poetry. Just some good poetry.
Yeah, I mean, I got to appreciate. I appreciate poetry a lot. I haven't read a ton of poetry lately, which is to my detriment, honestly. I love that stuff. And poetry is the vast wealth of knowledge was all contained in human poetry, honestly, for a long time. Because novels, prose fiction, and prose anything, honestly, didn't exist until like 300, 400 years ago in the Western world. I mean, they had it earlier in China and the East, but it's interesting if you consider how short of like the novel as we know it only exists in from Europe for maybe 300 years. Isn't that crazy? And we think that it goes back forever, but
insane. No, that's pretty insane.
I mean,
no, to consider that prose is
very young by the standards.
Yeah,
of history.
the written language. Yeah, God. Like, and that's people take that for granted. Like, memes are important, my dude. You know what I'm saying? And this is why I say poets are the original meme smiths. Like, memes are important. And the memes that were established with the stories being told through oration into the creation of the written language, be it westernized or otherwise. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's just, yeah, man.
And honestly,
poetry's
memes
awesome.
Memes have a lot in common with epic poetry.
Say it again.
Memes have a lot in common with epic poetry.
Because you know why I'm so happy you went there?
Why?
Do you know why I'm so happy? Because remember, I don't know if you remember the last time we spoke. Do you remember?
Not
what we were talking about?
No, I don't remember.
So we were talking about a little bit about the Tales of a Shirtless Nicko, and I think I'm turning that into an epic poem instead of a novel, or I said self-help book in the other podcast. But I'm kind of writing out a lot of lines that are going to be turning into the epic poem that is going to be that story. But it's going to revolve a lot around what was shared. But
awesome.
Yeah,
that's so great. I've always wanted to write an epic poem. Honestly, it's just kind of tough, I mean, it's tough to do, and it's also a tough sell in this day and age. Granted, I have read a pretty nice epic poem that fits all the classical definitions of epic poetry, but also was written just in the 2000s. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
it's fun. It's interesting. It's called Black Powder. I guess I'm gonna do my reading recommendation now because why not? Black Powder by okay, I should remember the name. I do not remember the name. He was Patrick Rothfuss's agent, the fantasy author's agent. Matthew Byler. Yeah, that's his name. I just couldn't remember off the top of my head. But this poem is it's actually a historical epic poem about the man who invented rocket fuel, basically.
I'll have to look it up.
And he was also like involved in alchemy with like Aleister Crowley's people in California, stuff like that. So it's a very kind of supernatural, psychedelic kind of feeling vibe to it. And it's an epic, and it's a modern epic.
That kind of gives insight of, or kind of gives an idea of what I'd like to do. Yeah, man. Thanks for that insight. That gives you something to look at.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially as something to, at the minimum, an example. Not that he set an example to follow, but more so an example to look at and adjust fire from.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Ooh, that's a good word. Consider.
Because you can't. I mean, it's one of those challenging things. If you don't read a piece like the one you're trying to write in some way, like of a similar length or a similar style or whatever it is that's like your thing, you're not going to know what if you really want to do the thing. Sometimes, that's what my experience has been. Yeah.
No, I completely agree with that.
Art. Yeah. Sorry, I talked over you there.
Oh no, it's not even a big deal. I was just saying I agree with you.
Yeah. So anyway, so epic poetry. I mean, that's awesome. I'm huge. I'm like I already made clear. I'm very in favor of that. Do you think there's a place? I mean, I know there is a place for poetry even in independent publishing and traditional publishing. There's still places for these things. It's just they're slightly more challenging than the stuff that's more in vogue among readers. That's fair. You just need to know where to go. It's like you said before.
You have to hit the audience.
Find your audience.
You have to. That's exactly what I was just about to say again. You have to hit the right audience. So, and yeah, that's what it comes down to, is finding that audience. And even if I don't have a big audience, I don't care. Like, so the reason I love epic poetry is what is the epic flaw of every epic hero?
Hubris.
Say it again. I'm so happy you know that.
I was an English fan. Of course I know that. It's hubris.
I'm so happy you know that. Yes. So check this hubris, okay? So I am writing a epic poem about myself. Right?
I'm sorry, I'm not laughing because it's silly. I just think
it's
I
good.
just like to check this hubris. Go for it.
It's good. Right. So I am writing a epic poem about myself, and the hubris of it all is being a published poet. So imagine publishing a poem and it actually being popular, thus fulfilling the hubris for which I stood in the poem.
It's like a circular act of self-destruction or something,
or
self-creation.
There's the optimist. Yes, it's either I am wildly successful, and I don't even have to witness my success. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I'm either wildly successful, and my hubris is thus, or whatever I have that hubris about. Whatever I'm self-confidence in, it comes to fruition, thus making the book come into fruition, or the poem rather, or I fail miserably, and the book is turned into a fantasy later that a child will read. Is like, oh, this is kind of like the Odyssey. Hey, can we compare this to the Odyssey? And then I'm read along with the Odyssey but I'm easier to read, but it's the same shit.
No, it's great. I mean, that's kind of almost a healthy ambition. I'm just gonna push back a little on the hubris side there. That's not a bad ambition. I don't think that's overweening pride at that point. But I think it's incredibly cool. But it's a good idea, But
my hubris is
yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go on. I was talking over you. Your hubris.
See, and that's the thing. It's all about me, right?
It sure is.
That's his hubris. That's his self-confidence. No, like my hubris is it's. So what I'm considering if I get my master's in literature, what I'm considering is like an Eastern redefinition of hubris. And do you watch anime or anything like that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm not as up to date on some of this stuff as I should be because I catch up on a lot of the old stuff lately.
How about One Piece?
I'm not caught up on it. I've been reading the manga because the anime is a little bit long for me, and the manga goes at my pace.
And that's fair, but you're familiar with it. How
Yeah,
about
definitely.
Naruto?
Yeah, I pretty much know that whole story. Yeah, I either read the
How
manga
about
or watched the whole thing. Yeah,
this is a pretty recent one, Black Clover.
I'm familiar with it, but I haven't read any or watched any of it.
What else is there? We'll just go with those three very blatant, flagrant examples of hubris, right?
Yeah, yeah,
We have Luffy. I will be the Pirate King, and that's what he's trying to become. We still haven't figured out if he becomes that or not. We'll figure that out in a little bit. But I consider that an epic poem and One Piece an epic poem in another sense. But
it's
that's
definitely an
beside the
epic
point.
of some kind. It's huge,
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah,
it's huge. That's fair. But then there's Naruto, and of course you see his hubris. I'm going to become the Hokage, and what does he fucking become? The
yeah,
Hokage. Why does he become it? Because of that hubris of I'm going to become it. It doesn't matter what you say. I'm going to become it. Right? It doesn't matter what my detriments are. It doesn't matter what my obstacles are. I'm going to become it.
yeah. I'm like, he's not
And
even a smart ninja. He's kind of a dumbass, but he still does it. He goes for it.
such as hubris, right?
Yeah.
People say Odysseus was stupid. It's like, how do you even mean? Like, how can you even consider that? Well, because why would he tell the son of Poseidon his name? Well, because hubris. But it's not stupidity. It's just
Yeah.
over self confidence. It's not
He's like, there's
stupidity,
no way you're gonna get me. It's that kind of thing. It's like,
right?
yeah,
Right. So what the Eastern connotation that I've seen is not stepping on toes. You don't step on toes to get what you to accomplish your dreams to get what you need. Though you beat somebody who will take negative actions towards you, right? You beat them in whatever rhetorical way, but you don't step on toes, right? You don't. It's not all about I'm making it myself. You're a kind and loving person to everybody you meet. You don't just kill somebody because you're going to be the Pirate King. It doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying?
no, I do see what you're saying. Like all those shonen shows, like those new age of them, especially the shonen fighting series, mostly for created their target audience is young teenagers in Japan. At least it was originally. But the thing is, it's very interesting because those shows, yeah, these heroes have incredible ambition, and yeah, I mean, call it hubris, call it ambition. It's the same thing. It's this amazing drive, but they're also very kind, almost to a fault. Especially like Naruto is definitely like that, and Luffy definitely. Those both definitely embody that, and it's really cool because it goes to show it's like because if you look at the Greek epics and the tragedies and stuff, these people they wreck a lot of people's shit. They don't give a. They're not nice men. These guys
No
are bad guys.
kindness. Right.
And so it makes sense that their story is going to end poorly. Actually, it's not even like a different cosmology. It's just like it's just the Greeks didn't seem to be able to imagine a hero who wasn't a bad dude.
It's such a perfect concept. Like how can one such exist? Right. But that's why I like Luffy. That's why I like Naruto because they aren't perfect. Right. They do have a lot of flaws. And to know that humans are that humans err to error always, always.
Mm-hmm.
We are fallible as fuck. But that's why science is so cool, is because it's like we're fallible, but check this, we challenge our fallibility. And it's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I love humanity.
Well, that's a good note to go out on. So remind everybody, because we are out of time. It's been awesome, Nicko.
Yeah, man.
Oh, it's great having you on. And remind everybody where they can find your podcast and anything else you got out there you want to send people to.
Absolutely. So my podcast is the Psyche-Delic podcast. That's again the Psyche, like the mind, Psyche -Delic DELIC, the Psyche-Delic podcast. We're all over the place. You check us out. We're on Facebook. Come say hi. Also, I'm a poet. My name's Nicko Kim. You can check out my poetry page, Nicko Kim, that I currently don't have access to. Or you can also check out some of the open mics that I attend, like the Barbed Wire open mic series down in El Paso, the New York and open mic out in New York, and the Broken mic out in Spokane. They all have a internet open mic that you can attend and spit at. So you can check me out in a lot of those places, especially the Barbed Wire open mic series. With that, Tim, it was awesome catching up with you, man.
It's always great. It's always great, dude. And thanks so much. It's fun. It's interesting. It's exciting, honestly. It's always great talking to you. So thanks again, and thanks for everyone for listening. You can find more about this podcast at mentalcellularpublications.com, and you can find my books on Amazon.com. Just search for Tim Niederreiter. There might be a link to in the podcast show notes. There may be a link this week. I'm going to try really hard to remember to do it, to my free book, The Crimson Suitor. The Crimson Suitor? Yeah, that's what it's called. The Crimson Suitor, which is an introduction to the Demon Hunter series. And you can get that for free if you just click the link on my website and go to the mailing list. Or you click the link in the show notes. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good one.
That tears it.